If you ever watched a football match, it is not uncommon to see goalkeepers jumping to their left or right side to save a goal. But why jump at all when the ball can come on any side of the goalkeeper without any reliable way to anticipate the direction? Isn't standing at the center a better choice after all? A survey done on soccer players says so. The survey showed that out of every 100 penalty kicks, goalkeepers remained in the center for only 6, even though 28 of these kicks were aimed at the center. This behavior can be attributed to the goalkeeper's desire for active involvement, as moving provides a sense of assurance that they are influencing the outcome. But at the same time, not moving and remaining at the center does not spare the goalkeeper either, because not moving evokes a sense of guilt that they are not doing enough. And it is not only sports. The guilt of not doing something is quite common in business, politics, and even in our daily lives. In fact, it is due to the same reason that some people honk at traffic stops, somehow feeling that it is going to make a difference. So, despite wasted efforts and even negative outcomes, why do we get into this guilt, feeling compelled to act? The answer lies in our deep-rooted tendency towards taking action, what we call as action bias or bias for action.
You're addicted to action.
Action bias is the psychological phenomenon where people tend to favor action over inaction, even when there is no indication that doing so would fetch better results. Anthony Patt and Richard Zackhauser, the research duo who explored this topic, say that action bias is a product of non-rational behavior and that we may end up making poor choices as a consequence. While their research is exhaustive, we will simplify it to explore the origin of action bias, how it lures us into futile actions, and why avoiding these actions not only make us feel guilty, but also feeds this bias at the same time. It is hardwired into our genes. This theory suggests that our hunter-gatherer ancestors during their journey of evolution had no option but to act immediately, be it fighting off predators or killing a gazelle for food. Taking action was key to survival. The action takers were celebrated due to the fact that they were the breadwinners. While in our modern world, we are not subjected to such situations anymore. Nonetheless, the conditioning still manages to creep into our psyche. This is vividly demonstrated by the favorable attitude of teachers towards students who are more participative or taking action in the classroom. Being outspoken is often seen as being intelligent and gregarious against being silent in the classroom. And it can indeed be true. At the same time, it does not mean that the silent students are less talented or less knowledgeable in any way, shape or form. However, favoring participating kids and ignoring the silent ones is more common than we can think of. While it makes the participative students feel good, the introverted kids, on the other hand, develop a feeling of inadequacy due to inaction. They feel that guilt of not doing something or not doing enough. Pat and Zackhauser call this feeling the punishing inaction. Punishing inaction is felt by people who had negative experiences due to inaction. These people tend to compensate for this feeling by taking futile actions or engaging in action bias. Suffice to say that action bias and punishing inaction feed each other. One of the prime examples of this is the business of motivation. Motivational speakers, content, and courses are targeted specifically towards millennials and Gen Zs. Most of them do not have their own house, lack job security, and probably do not have a great credit score either. They dream of a life with financial freedom, with a lot of exotic travel, cars, and a great lifestyle. A lot of them hate their jobs and feel inadequate, that they are not doing enough. These people are likely drowning in the feeling of punishing inaction. This feeling of punishing inaction is often baked into the narratives of these motivational videos and becomes unsettling for a large bunch of people. I mean, just look at the number of the views on these videos. This is why rhetorical lines, color-graded footage, and theatrical music are common with motivational content, as they are intended to connect on an emotional level and give you a sense of hope. But despite all the fluff, these contents are not going to change anything in their lives of the people who watch them. This is because millennials and Gen Zs working a 9 to 5 with a hefty mortgage probably won't quit their job and plunge into pursuing their dreams. So all they do is watch these videos only to drown in the feeling of punishing inaction, and to compensate, take action by watching more videos, thus creating a vicious cycle. Probably a majority of the people who watch them do it for the same reason, whether they are aware of it or not. The next reason, which is fairly common in the business world, is the need for control. Businesses are constantly battling each other to gain a larger market share. The ones losing the market share quickly develop the guilt of not doing something. In order to restore control, a lot of companies feel compelled to act, and the results are not favorable all the time. The infamous case of New Coke and its monumental failure is an example that vividly demonstrates the fear of losing control and punishing inaction. Most of you may know that Coke was compelled to launch a brand new flavor to compete with Pepsi and stop losing its market share. Coke conducted a blind test and concluded that Pepsi was growing as it was sweeter in taste. Hence, it launched an improved version with more sweetness, of course. However, the bias to action in this case completely ignored the emotional and cultural connections Americans had with Coca-Cola. The new Coke, despite being favored in the blind test, was an insult to that connection. It was similar to launching a Harley with an improved engine that made almost no sound at all. Irrespective of the fact that action bias can cause more harm than benefit, it is still favored in the corporate world and entrepreneurial circles. In fact, one of the key values in Amazon's company culture is bias to action. But why? How does something make it to the list of values when it can be grossly detrimental? Pat and Zach Hauser suggests that action bias may be favored to learn about a situation. Being prepared leads to better strategies while freeing us from the guilt of not doing something at the same time. The idea is to build at speed, test and revert back if things do not work. However, things like incorrect health diagnosis, poor economic policies, and bad investments due to action bias are irreversible in nature. The damage may perpetuate into poor financials and bring life-altering consequences for customers and people in general. This brings us to this inevitable question: how do we choose between action and inaction? From a personal standpoint, it can be perplexing to choose between acting or remaining in the guilt of inaction. While classical Western philosophy has given more emphasis on action, the Eastern philosophies, on the other hand, value inaction as an important virtue of a fulfilling life. One of the major practices known as Wu Wei, which literally means inexertion or effortless action, is often deemed as a great virtue. According to Wu Wei, all things in the universe, including all human beings, having in accord with the cosmic way their own natural course, which, if unimpeded, leads to flourishing. However, human beings, through their logical thought, language, culture, and government, often interfere with this natural course, forsaking spontaneity for artifice. While this sounds profound, the nature of Wu Wei sounds more spiritual than intellectual, making it inapplicable in our current world, which is built on the idea of self-actualization through some form of intellectual conquest of a subject. Also, if the natural course is going to unfold till the time we die, it is hard for us to simply accept it and do nothing. This is because the guilt of inaction may soon find its way to our psyche. The best and actionable way to know if an action must be taken or not is by simply examining the consequences of both inaction and action. We must always try to have the foresight, document history, and observe patterns. Maybe our task as a collective is to go into this journey while ridding ourselves from the guilt of not doing something, the guilt of inaction. Please like and share if you love the content.